one of the oldest arguments around is whether an entrepreneur is born or made. The argument itself is moot, with many examples of entrepreneurs from both educated and self-taught backgrounds. So the real question should be whether or not entrepreneurs can equip themselves with specific tools to give them a better chance of success when they do strike out on their own ventures. So joining us for this discussion, Mark Ashton, still with me, FinWeek editor, Jessica Hubbard, FinWeek journalist, Haley Parry, founder of The Money School, and Richard Bentley, owner of Richard Bentley Consulting. Welcome to you both. So Richard, I'll start off with you. Your thoughts on the quality of entrepreneurial education in South Africa right now?
I don't think there is anything of any significance, quite honestly. I think what one needs as an entrepreneur is self-experience, is life skills. And one generally, the entrepreneurs that I'm aware of and I know and I react with, they're all self-taught at the end of the day. There is no manual or handbook that will suit me or will suit my business. I can write a handbook. I have a handbook for my franchise business. I can give it to my franchisees. They have a manual which tells them how to run their business, from opening the door to closing the door at the end of the day. That doesn't work for anybody else who's in a different business. So somewhere you have to go and look for it, and I think you have to look for it typically by working for somebody else. I'm fortunate that I had a corporate background which gave me some discipline in terms of corporate management, budgeting, finances, and that type of issue.
But there we go, because not everyone goes into corporate before becoming an entrepreneur. So perhaps you need to learn those financial skills and management skills at a university.
Well, yes, but those are not necessarily relevant to what you're going to go and do. Mm-hmm. If I look at what I'm doing today, I'm 5 steps away from what I went to university to learn. I learned to become a mining engineer. I'm now essentially a carpenter. So, you know, we've been down a long road since then. We've been building boats and done all sorts of things. There's been a lot of life skill learning. We've collapsed businesses. We've learned from our mistakes, or I've learned from my mistakes, put it that way. And the multitude of different things that I have undertaken in my life have all come together to help me to do what I'm doing today, which I think I'm doing successfully, or so I'd like to think I am.
Haley, if you had to advise an entrepreneur on the type of courses that they should take, I mean, what stands out for you though?
That's a tricky question, because I think it depends really on the circumstances. What business is it that you're in, and what's the problem that you're being faced with? And I think I could probably make a case for both sides of the argument. It's like you said, you know, some of the examples, a lot of those arguments are moot. Having said that, I'm a big fan of employing expertise in when you need it. So whether that means that you as the entrepreneur need to upskill yourself, you know, go find what it is that you're looking for. A short course, online studying. I think the nature of education itself is changing these days. Mm-hmm. So you can look in the formal environment if that's something that you're needing, if you're needing skills that go deep in terms of finance or accounting. My preference would be, me personally, hire somebody who I know is good at that. If I know I've got a weakness in a particular area, hire somebody to assist me there so that I can focus on the stuff that I know I do well. And if you're in a startup in particular, to keep the momentum of your business going. That's something that, you know, concerns me. If you're stepping out to educate yourself on one thing, what happens to everything else that you're trying to keep running at the same time? Mm-hmm. Having said that, I'm also a big fan of learning on the job. You know, and I think particularly with the social media tools we have at our disposal today, it's a lot easier to do that than it was even 2 or 3 years ago.
You have to really kind of go out there and look, you know, find people you can connect with. I suppose some people might say it's almost the lazy option in a sense to go to university and hope that everyone just gives you the information that you need.
I don't know if it's lazy. I mean, there's a certain amount of discipline that comes from studying in a formal environment.
Certainly, yeah.
And that will help you in many instances. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to help you in all the different situations you're going to be in. The reality is, I can't remember what I studied in first year, in particular, in detail, if I'm needing something. But the process of education, I think, is a lifelong one. And depending what you need, hopefully you've got then the ability to zone in on what it is that you need to help your business and go find it.
Do you think that there's merit in studying entrepreneurship at, for example, GIBS Wits. I mean, the University of Cape Town, I think, has an innovation and entrepreneurship centre specifically devoted to this.
There definitely is merit in taking a course or doing an entrepreneurship program, especially at a high quality institution such as Gibbs. But I think what these courses also show you are where your weaknesses lie. So you can come out of those courses and you can see, okay, I was poor at finance, or I'm shocking at admin. And so when you go into your business, you can partner up with those people who are strong in those areas where you are weak. So courses do also expose your weaknesses. I think self-honesty and self-knowledge is an important part of being an entrepreneur, and it can guide you where to go for your mentor or your business partners in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you look at it, it's very interesting. If you look at the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year awards, and a lot of that, a lot of the guys that win those competitions are very often bean counters. They guys that come out with CA type degrees, and they understand the basics of business. Alon Reyes has always said to me, business is simple: buy for one, sell for two. And yet, majority of people can't actually build businesses that buy for one and sell for two. But I think the question is actually more fundamental to South Africa, because you often go and you have these discussions around dinner, and everybody says, yeah, but my kids now study entrepreneurship at school, and they have done for the last 10 years, which is very different from when you and I were at school, for instance. And you start to realize, well, surely that should be having some kind of impact on the broader economy, and it doesn't. I mean, bluntly, it hasn't changed in South Africa. And there was some interesting research done out of the Kaufman Foundation in the US. They said that there's been 1,500 specialist entrepreneurship type colleges introduced, and the impact is actually relatively low on a US type scale. And the US are already quite a high innovation type economy. But what is interesting is that in these tertiary type qualifications, I'm just looking at the numbers here, percentage involved in new ventures post a qualification, 54% of people go and they get involved in trying to start new businesses. 27% have become self-employed from it. So it has a knock-on impact to the rest of the economy. The question is, can you add sufficient value, and can you instill the sort of culture of entrepreneurship? That's where I find like both Richard and Haley's stories are very interesting, because they've come from very different environments, and they show that you can kind of go through the corporate, you can build something, but it's a lifelong thing. You can't just study an entrepreneurship qualification and suddenly think, well, now I'm qualified to run a business. And I think both from an entrepreneurship level plus a structural level in South Africa, we want to talk about entrepreneurship. We see these little colleges popping up, etc.
Incubators,
etc. But it's got to be part of a culture. You got to believe in yourself that you're actually creating businesses, and I think that's still missing.
I mean, I just, also reading up on entrepreneurship, and kept on coming up the issue around confidence. If you go into university, you can't be taught confidence, you can't be taught to be a risk taker, and those two qualities really inherent to entrepreneurs. But it is a culture. I mean, the US really does have a culture of entrepreneurship, whereas I think South Africa isn't there yet. So how do you teach that? How do you teach someone to have that?
I don't think you can teach it. It's something, if you wake up one day and decide you're going to start a business, you must certainly go and do it in something that you have skills in. You must know the market, you must know what sort of customers you're going to deal with, and then you plan your business around that. You don't going to wake up, I wouldn't wake up tomorrow and go and start a ladies' lingerie store, for instance. I might know a lot about it, but I'm not very good at running it. That's the main thing, I think. So you have to know market and what you're going to do.
I think it would help more if entrepreneurs who have failed in the past spoke out and got out there in the public and spoke out about the experiences. I mean, in the US, you have these FailCon conferences every year, where it's basically a bunch of guys and girls going there and talking about how they failed and what they did right and what they did wrong. And so you encourage people to go out there and try. Whereas within our economy and our business industry, people are very scared to fail, and there's too much conservatism around that. So I think if people spoke out and
made it more acceptable.
Talked amongst each other and made it more acceptable to fail, people would be more willing to try.
Yeah, maybe I'll put it to Haley. You came out of a corporate environment, you went back and you've started a new venture, but a lot of the skills that you acquire in a corporate environment, you've learned in that, maybe the question is, people often rush in when they're young, and they want to, young and dumb, and they want to start a business because they can, and then they don't actually realize what's involved in it. They don't take the time to build the relationships. Making that jump out of corporate back to entrepreneurship.
Well, Mark, my particular story. This is actually the second time I'm doing it, and I forgot. I forgot how hard it is. I'm not drawing a salary this month. I think we're on the cusp of a great deal, but I forgot how hard it is. I forgot the slog that's involved in starting a business. And you know, when you're in something and it's going well, you forget the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And you know,
What do you do
I
at
went
Money
back
School
and
for
did it
those-
again, and I'm glad I did. But I'm just saying, yeah, there's a lot of realism. You know, you do have to be real about the downsides. You can't just be like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur.
And this brings us back to another conversation we've had about entrepreneurship. Do you stay within your company, build your entrepreneurial idea until you can get to a point where you know that you can step away and you will be drawing an income from the business? What are your thoughts on that now that you've had experience in both worlds?
I think it comes down to your propensity for risk. So how you manage that aspect is one thing, and the other thing is I think you also need to be mindful of the ethics involved in doing that, because quite often in my experience, when people start businesses, it's often related to what they were doing or the field that they're currently involved in. And you know, more often than not, you're going to need to tap into former colleagues, those resources that you know. And if you cross people on your way out, personally, I wouldn't advise that as a good way, you know, to start something. What I would rather suggest, if you are risk averse, that you make provision for income prior to stepping away. Yeah, make a clean break, do it the right way, and make sure you don't burn any bridges on the way, because they may well be your first clients, you know, if you do it properly.
Just picking up on Haley's earlier point, networks are essential, and I think South Africans are shy about tapping into their networks, tapping into their resources. Where in economies like the UK and the US, people are very open about sharing, about asking for help. I think it was Fred Robertson from Brimstone just commented this week. He said the 2 rules for entrepreneurship are keep good company and bat straight. So he advises that you find the right mentor and you act ethically, because you're going to have to draw on those people that you've worked with, and you're going to need them in the future.
Last, a bit of advice from you, Richard.
Well, I think that mentor is absolutely critical. You've got to have a sounding board. You've got to have a therapist to go to and talk your problems through, who is completely removed from your business, so they can give you a clean perspective or just some help and general assistance. The other thing is, I think people, when they dream about starting a business, they underestimate enormously the slog, the effort, as you say, the no pay, and it goes on for years. It's not 1 month or 2 months. We're talking 2 years, 3 years. We're talking Mark Human just now 7 years before he actually got to where he is today. So, you know, Richard Branson's got a lovely story. We all listen to him, but he slogged away for years and years and years before he had an airline that flew.
Yeah.
And I think that's what one must never underestimate, the effort that's required to start your own business. It's not easy.